So welcome everybody to the meeting, and please note that we are broadcasting this meeting live. And in addition, an on-demand recording will also be made available after the meeting. That'll be on the website. The 14 main members of the FWG should please use their video if they are able to ensure that they appear on the screen at all times. Everyone else should please switch off their video unless they're speaking. Please do keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking throughout the meeting. At certain points in the meeting, the FWG members will open the floor for discussion and comments from participants, contributors, and observers. And during that time, when you want to take the floor, please simply write your name in the chat function. That makes it a lot easier for us and for the co-chairs to keep track of who would like to take the floor and in what order. Please refer to the LCIPP webpage for all the documents that you need. We'll put the relevant links into the chat throughout the meeting so that it's easier for you to find them. So if we're talking about a concept note or a document, we will link it in the chat so that it's easier for everybody to find. The working language of constituted bodies is English, but for this meeting, in addition to English, we have managed to get French, Spanish, and Russian interpretation. We sent out an email with some instructions about the Interprify app last week, but we've managed to make a change to that. So if you'll have a look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's a little globe icon with the interpretation there, and then there is where you select which language you would like to listen to, English, French, Spanish, or Russian. And that should make the interpretation a bit easier. All right, that's all the housekeeping announcements we have. And please do keep checking the chat for any other announcements and links that we keep putting there. Thank you.
Leosim Chaniabo, Mawayaim, Ketuna Lensus, Imiwayaim. Respectful greetings to you, my relatives. My name is Andrea Carmen from the Yaqui Indigenous Nation of Southern Arizona and Northern Sonora, Mexico. I am opening the meeting on behalf of my esteemed co-chair, Yo Mulalab, who will be also co-chairing this meeting of the fourth Facilitative Working Group, the second that we've held virtually, which, as we've noted, has advantages for participation without having to arrange airfares and etc., hotels, but also we greatly miss each other's direct contact. So it's a pleasure to see everyone's face at least and hear their voices for this meeting. I will be, along with my co-chair, Yo Mulalap, will be doing some opening remarks. And I'd like to also thank Tiffany for her housekeeping remarks and recognize the hard and persistent and excellent work of our secretariat as we have moved through these first year and a half almost of the Facilitative Working Group work. So with that, I would like to introduce Ms. Amy Juan of the Tohono O'odham Nation. They're neighbors of our Yaqui Indigenous Nation, and she's one of the young ceremonial leaders, especially working with the women, the coming of age ceremony of the Tohono O'odham, and has a very important role in that way. She's also a traditional farmer and very active in the food sovereignty work and addressing the impacts of climate change for her nation. So with that, I want to turn the floor over to her and just express my regrets for some of the last minute confusion around this. Again, we're getting used to the virtual format, and it does not indicate in any way the lack of vital importance that we hold the role of our traditional knowledge holders and our spiritual leaders to guide us in this work and start us in a good way for this meeting. So with that, I'll turn the floor to Amy Juan, who will present opening ceremony so that we can come together with our minds and hearts and be one in this very important work that we're charged to do. Thank you. Chokwe Tessia.
Thank you, Andrea. Skuksiarek, the Wisapamwe, Anya Jigik, Amy Wan, Jabkawaya Amjit, Stukta Jukshan, Donald the Nation, Nijinya Og of Jitgik, Carmel de Miguel, Sylvester Wan, and Yakak Jinuaska of Jitgik, Mary Melissa Miles Butt, Daniel Wambutt, and Yahul Yabab, Chichigate Mary Elizabeth McGill Butt, Lawrence McGill Butt, and Yawipinut God Elijah Christang Ross. So good morning, everybody. I'm coming to you from the Dana the Nation, which is located in Southwest Arizona. We are about 65 miles west of Tucson, about 200 miles south of Phoenix, and we share 75 miles of international border between the United States and Mexico, where our lands, our people, our sacred landscapes are divided by this border. And as many of you know, currently we're facing the threat of the Trump administration's border wall. And so those are some of the things that are happening here in my community. And I think about all the different changes that I have seen in my young life here in my homelands. And so I think of all of you and all of the challenges, but also the resilience that we all have in our communities and within our leadership, especially our elders and our children. And so it's my pleasure and honor this morning to offer words and offer song from my people, from the desert people here. And, you know, we joke about being desert people, we get a lot of sun, right? And so we count ourselves as good-natured people. And so I'm really happy to offer that to everyone this morning. And just starting off by burning some of our medicine that we call shigi for us, to unite us, especially because we're not able to be together physically. And so when we think about these elements such as fire and the way that, you know, it brings us together and we're able to sit around it. And I ask that you all think of that. So just to cleanse the air. To start off our prayer, I'd like to share this song. And this song is composed by a good friend of mine named Michael David Enos from the Walk community here on the Dana the Nation. He's a young person like I am, but also I guess what some people would call a song dreamer. And this song that I'm going to share is about the good light that's spreading all over the earth and how we are a part of that. So singing in celebration of the light that comes from within us, but also through our prayers and through our people that we share. And definitely today is a part of that as we come together from different parts of the world, that we think of that fire within us, especially in this work, all the things that we care about, our communities, our children, our grandchildren, our unborn, and that light that we like to shed for them to direct their way. And so it's a simple song, but I hope that it stays with you and that it reminds you every day of the good work that we're all doing. So. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Jawara katemori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Jawara katemori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Tapos esta mama se matonori. Jawara katemori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Jawurika shimoi. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Jawurika shimoi. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Jawurika shimoi. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Jawurika shimoi. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Jawurika shimoi. Sapo sisi mama sima tonori. Danatikam, we thank you for this beautiful day, for us to come together with all the gifts that we carry with us, the gifts of knowledge, the gifts of love in our hearts, and the gift of wisdom, and the support of our people, our communities, our roots, our teachings, all of these things that we bring to the table. All of the people involved in this meeting have been chosen for a reason, to make decisions for the benefit, for the good of everyone. And we ask for your continued guidance and strength and clarity in their minds and their hearts, and for everyone who makes these decisions, to know that everyone affects the other and that we're all connected, and to do our best to get to that good place again, where we are moving as one, and that we are respectful of everyone's teachings, of everyone's land, of the way that everyone comes to the table, and to be heard, and to be listened to, and to be acknowledged in those good ways. We ask for, especially for blessings upon those that provide for us our food, our water, our land, our rights, our families, especially. We ask for prayers of protection and of health all over the world, especially for those who are dear to us, that we may continue to move forward into the future, and to build a better world for all of us. And we especially want to acknowledge the things that are happening in the sky, the eclipse that's happening today, and all of the things that are following in the days to come, that these alignments also are in alignment with what's in our hearts and the things that we pray for, and that we just continue to honor each other as humans, to honor all of our basic rights, and do our best to ensure that everyone is living a good life. So, Sapo, thank you. Thank you so much for asking me to do this blessing. And I wish you all a very good meeting. So, Sapo, thank you.
Choku Desia, Amy, thank you. I know I, for one, needed that prayer and those reminders that you shared with us. I would like to also ask that we think and send our prayers and thoughts and blessings to all the families that have recently lost loved ones, and all those that are struggling at home or in hospitals, to find healing from this pandemic that we are suffering, which is the reason that we're holding this meeting virtually. And I also want to offer my thoughts and prayers for the good health of each one of you and your families at this difficult time that we're facing. So we will continue with our fourth official meeting of the Facilitative Working Group of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples platform. At this time, I would just like to offer a few remarks and a welcome, first of all, to all of you. Remind everyone, if you're not a member of the Facilitative Working Group or a scheduled speaker for the opening session, to please turn off your video at this time. And it will be opened again when there is an opportunity for you to take the floor. And that will help with everybody's connectivity issues here. We were reminded yesterday there was a meeting of the what's called the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change that we normally call the Indigenous Caucus for the UNFCCC. And we were reminded by one of our traditional knowledge holders from my region, the North America region, Chief Howard Thompson, that the Facilitative Working Group is not the platform. We are charged with that big word that's hard to say, operationalizing or bringing into being, formalizing the platform. And it's up to us in this brief 3 years that the current members are asked to serve in this capacity by our regions to provide the groundwork for the future work of the platform, which is intended to engage our knowledge holders, our Indigenous peoples in all of the regions in this work for addressing, adaptating, and preventing further damage to our peoples and ways of life from climate change. So we are paving the way. We are not carrying out the platform, but we are creating it and creating that space, and that space in a way that will ensure participation, ensure that that there will be engagement, ensure that this work is accessible to our peoples, and ensure that their rights are safeguarded in this engagement. So those were just some very good thoughts and words that I had the opportunity to listen to yesterday in the caucus meeting, and I wanted to share those thoughts and again welcome everybody that's taking place, and thank you all for your very hard and sincere work on the different areas and activities that we've been charged to carry out, most of it virtually in the last year. And I really appreciate the respectful engagement that each and every one of the members, together with our secretariat, has been able to undertake this year. And since our last meeting, which was just a couple of months ago as well, there's been a lot of hard work that will be shared here with each other and also with all of the participants that I welcome to this session as well. And I'd like to ask now my esteemed co-chair, Yo Mulalap, to share some opening comments for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and greetings to everyone. Just to very briefly echo all that Andrea has said, welcoming not just the FWG members, but also participants, contributors, and observers here. Thank you for taking the time to spend some time with us in the carrying out of our work. Thank you as well to the Secretariat for your really hard work behind the scenes, as well as here, helping us prepare for and conduct this meeting. And a particular thanks to Amy Wan for your very moving opening ceremony. As we all know, this is really the 5-year mark since the adoption of the Paris Agreement, as well as the decision that created the LCIPP. This is a very pivotal time for all of our collective work. And so I really take to heart what Amy Wan said at the end of her ceremony about us trying to make decisions for the benefit and good of everyone, to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table so that we're all connected, respectful of each one's contributions. And at least for the FWG, this particular time is a critical one for the operationalizing the LCIPP, with a large number of our activities coming to maturity. And so I very much look forward to working with my fellow FWG members and all of the contributors and participants in moving together in this important task. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity for these opening remarks. And at this moment, I would like to hand over the floor to Estebancio, who is the FWG member representing the indigenous peoples from the region of Central and South America and the Caribbean. I see him on video. Good to see you, Estebancio. He will make some opening remarks on behalf of the IPO constituency. Go ahead, Estebancio, I see you.
Thank you, Joe, and also thank you to Madam Co-Chair as well. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to Amy Huang for that very special ceremony. Very much appreciate, and hopefully can guide us a benefit for everybody, as my brother Joe expressed. I would like to, I guess I'm not talking as a member of the Facilitative Working Group, or I'm talking as a indigenous peoples organizations and communities focal point. So I'm gonna express our concerns as indigenous peoples. I think that one of the main concerns, and we still maintaining that concerns with us, is the difficulties of the language barrier that we have, especially for our regions of Africa, Russia, and Latin American and Caribbean. And we understand that we have difficult times, and we understand that, but we also feel that our constituencies they are staying back because they have not appropriate language that they can read the documents and provide some input to us so we can express in our meetings here in Facilitated Working Group. Hopefully, our Indigenous Peoples Caucus can find ways or mechanisms that find a friendly NGO or someone else that could provide us that facility to translate some documents, important documents that need to be get to the communities and the knowledge holders, especially because it's what we have decided that we want their opinion, we want their input. If we don't give their in their own language or the second language, because for me, English is the dear language, but we are trying to understand and trying to provide comments and input here. Secondly, very, very close to that, we know that sometimes is as a representative of the Latin American and Caribbean, especially also, I didn't want to talk on behalf of Hindu, but we have been talking a lot about this. Sometimes we have to move somewhere else and we get no contact at all with the internet, and we have difficulties with this. So we have to find mechanisms and also find the timing to provide us, especially for the regions of Russian, Asian, African, and Latin American and Caribbean, so we can digest documents and respond properly. Because if you guys or the secretariat gonna send us a document for 3 days and we are not close to the internet or Wi-Fi, we're gonna miss. Maybe we disagree with some of the comments, but we won't do anything else because the timing is gone. Just bear in mind that we have difficulties, and also my constituencies feel that difficulties not only for the representatives of the regions, but also for indigenous knowledge holders to get in touch, to know what exactly is going on this. I think that I just want to highlight this before we start, so we know that this is the only opportunity that we have. We don't have like a face-to-face meeting, but I would like to have uh, to give opportunity to our constituency to express their concerns or their point of view, if they have time to read or translate in their own way, because it is very difficult. Anyway, thank you very much, Joe, and thank you very much to everybody who has work, and especially the secretariat. I know that has been a big effort in this time that is not certainly, but we still here. My voice has changed in few months, but I'm here. That's what's important, that we all are here, and we're trying to work in the benefit of our communities and our society and our countries, because trying to do this is not just for Indigenous peoples, it's for everybody. Thank you very much, Joe, and thanks everybody. Hopefully we can have a great meetings and great benefits for everybody. Thank you.
Joko Utesia Estebancio, I really appreciate and share the concerns that you've expressed around translation, around the challenges of these virtual formats, but also understanding that if we have face-to-face meetings, we're also challenged by being able to include our peoples when the issues of paying for air flights and hotels are also barriers. So I think that we, to be responsible in this work and understand that the priorities are the involvement of our knowledge holders and our traditional practitioners in our communities, that we need to keep considering these challenges as we move forward. And the language barrier is just one of them. We are going to be having chance to speak later in the meeting about some of the email protocols for adopting positions and drafting statements to other bodies, and even just among the members of the Facilitative Working Group, these matters are a challenge, let alone having the time, the language, and the technical capacity to consult with our regions. Because just to recall with everyone, as we well know, we are representatives of Indigenous regions. Those of us that are Indigenous members, and some of these matters can be be very difficult, and so we need to keep discussing how we can resolve and move forward, and everybody's suggestions will be welcome when we talk about these things through this meeting. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a coordination meeting among the co-chairs and the vice chairs with the Secretariat. And I was very pleased that the Secretariat also invited Mr. Yosef Nassef to share some thoughts with us. And he is the director of the Adaptation Division and the Division of Intergovernmental Support and Collective Progress. And he highlighted the difference that this body can make to the process of the UNFCCC, being the only constituted UN body, not just at UNFCCC, but anywhere, that has a direct representation by Indigenous peoples on an equal standing and basis with the equal number of state representatives, and why that makes this so different, as well as its intent. So I was really happy with my co-chair to be able to invite him to share some of those ideas and what they mean for our work, and what we can carry out and what we can contribute to these discussions at the UNFCCC. So with that, I want to introduce Yosef Nassef to share some opening words with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you all, both of you, for inviting me here. I'm very humbled and honored to be able to welcome you to the 4th meeting of the FWG. Out of respect, I hope you will allow me to speak heart to you rather than follow a designated script. You mentioned, actually Yao mentioned, I think, the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, which we just celebrated. And it was an opportunity for me to do some introspection on the early negotiations and the aspirations that one had at the time, and the hopes that we were bridging the process towards a different era, a different paradigm, one where we have this enhanced participation of indigenous peoples, but not just enhanced participation, but joint leadership of a constituted body like this. And this is something, like you said, something that we have never had before. And the whole paradigm of inclusiveness, of respect of indigenous rights, practices, knowledges, and worldviews. And one where the knowledge systems, the values of indigenous peoples get woven into the climate change process. And in thinking of the work of the platform and of the FWG so far, and how it would move into the future, in my mind, I felt that we're moving through 3 different narratives. One of them is that broader context, the context, the backdrop that we have of respecting and promoting and considering the rights and interests of indigenous peoples as enshrined in UN DRIP, including the right to maintain and strengthen institutions and cultures and tradition, and of full participation, of which this is an example now. And I'm happy to note that the group has always ensured that this basic broad backdrop is always at the forefront of the deliberations. The second narrative is the UNFCCC specific one, which broadly defines the platform, the whole notion of strengthening knowledge, technology, practices, and efforts of indigenous peoples and local communities within the climate change context, and the exchange of experience, the sharing of best practices, the enhancement of engagement in the process. And that narrative, I think, is also going on well, and the efforts from the different activities of the Facilitative Working Group are certainly adding a lot of value in this regard. Now, the third narrative is the one I wanted to focus on a bit, which is that of the role of indigenous peoples in that transformation towards a sustainable and climate safe world. You all know about the IPCC reports and how they highlighted the urgency of the needed transformation within the next few years. And they also highlighted the role of indigenous peoples, of indigenous knowledge, traditions, values. And it's sort of the elephant in the room that the transformation calls for a massive revision of humanity's worldview, of the interface with nature, our interaction with our natural support system towards one that is regenerative, one that is restorative and holistic and equitable. And to me, at least, it is quite obvious that building on indigenous values in helping the world make this transition is an obvious way forward. And it is also a unique opportunity presented to the LCIPP and to the FWG to lead the world towards that transformation. And in this context, I would very much like to appeal to you to assume that leadership in imparting your guidance that has been assumed through millennia of accumulated insight. Help the process with the transformation, help pave the way, as Andrea said. And it's a conversation whose time has come. perhaps maybe overdue. And if it is not led from this platform, I see no other obvious source of inspiration or guidance or momentum towards that future world that is good for everyone, as Amy also reminded us in her opening. So with this, I would like to wish you very much a very good meeting. And I would like to invite you to give some thought, give some introspection to my call of how can we use the tremendous insight, the tremendous accumulated wisdom that you all carry, and how can we apply this now to our process as we are on the cusp of a transformation. How do we help the rest of the climate change process under the UNFCCC, under the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol? How can it readjust, retool its operations in order to enable that transformation that is needed within the very short window that we have left? It is obvious that our normal baby steps will not necessarily lead us to the required end, but I believe that the types of discourse that we might have in this particular forum is that window of opportunity that awaits us, and that is the key to the transformation that is needed. And with this, I thank you very, very much, and once again, welcome you to this fourth meeting of the FWG.
Thank you, Joko Tessia, Joseph. You've charged us with a lot of responsibility, and I think that we recognize that this does need to be different. This body needs to be different. We need to be charged and feel free to do things in a different way, to bring in different insights. As you said, you know, the words regenerative, holistic, restorative, and equitable are a good framework, I think, for us to begin this meeting, and to understand that we have that institutional support from within the UNFCCC to do things in a new way, a different way, and bring in elements that have not to date been part of the conversation, to the detriment not just of Indigenous peoples, but to the planet and all members of the human family. So I'm really glad that you were able to join us here. And thank you. I hope you can, be part of the discussions going forward. We welcome you with sincere hearts to this discussion. The next thing that we need to do at this time, I understand from my annotated agenda, is to address organizational matters. And with that, also to address changes in membership, which I am notified that there has been no proposals at this time for discussion at this meeting with any changes of the membership of the Facilitative Working Group. So taking note of that, we can move forward. And the next item will be adoption of the agenda, and all the members of the Facilitative Working Group receive the agenda. I know there was, input and comments that have been integrated and included now in the current agenda. There is, towards the end, an agenda item called Other Matters, that can also include some other concerns or additions that may arise, understanding that we're going to be getting input from our constituencies, as well as consideration of very important matters that we may have some other issues that we need to discuss. And purposely, this meeting was not as jam-packed on an agenda as our last one was a couple of months ago, so that we really intend for there to be time for input from the participants and time for discussion on key matters that may be of concern. But with that, I'd like to ask if any of the Facilitative Working Group members have additions to the agenda before you at this time. The members, I can see you on the camera, so you could just raise your hands or put a raise hand feature or use the chat, and the secretariat, like last time, will help us to make sure that we're noting anybody that wants to take the floor. But those of you on camera can just physically raise your hand if you want to say something. So I see no additional comments to the agenda. And I think as co-chairs, we can leave this open. If anything does arise, we can put it in other matters or put it in an appropriate place as we move forward. So with that, hearing no objections, the agenda as presented before us is adopted to begin the meeting. Thank you very much. And the next agenda item, the third agenda item, is information update on progress on activities that are not mandated for the Facilitative Working Group. Means that they do not have a set timeline that we are mandated to address at this meeting. So with that, I would like to ask Tiffany to speak to these matters and give us some updates on even some of the things that we've been able to accomplish since our last meeting. So with that, I turn the floor over to our esteemed secretariat, Tiffany Hodgson, for sharing the information that we need to have under this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea and Yo. So like Andrea mentioned, these are going to be activities that are not going to be taken up in depth during the course of this meeting because they don't have particular mandates for this meeting. So those activities are 1, 3, 4, 8, 10, and 12. Activity 1, as all the members know, this one is about organizing annual meetings in conjunction with the sessions of the COP on cross-cutting themes related to addressing and responding to climate change. The co-leads for this activity are Andrea and Passan. The annual meeting is planned to take place in Glasgow at COP26. And in advance of that, during the course of next year, the FWG and Secretariat will be compiling 2 kinds of information to inform that meeting. The first kind of information is on the use of local knowledge systems. And the second is information on existing rights of Indigenous peoples related to the exchange and safeguarding of traditional knowledge, and on Indigenous peoples' protocols. For this latter topic of safeguarding, since it's linked to other ongoing work on safeguards, Andrea will also touch on this when she presents activity 2 later today as co-lead on that activity. Activity 3, as members know, this is the one about Indigenous peoples' curricula and materials that incorporate Indigenous knowledge and languages. On this activity, the co-leads are Daly, Jane, and Passan. And we've started to work on identifying examples of curricula and to reiterate the call made at FWG 3 by the co-leads for FWG members to send in any examples they know from their regions. So this would be really appreciated. Also, contributors to this meeting and observers, any stakeholders are very welcome to send in examples that they have of such curricula. And the address we'll put in the chat there. If Chad can put it in the chat for me, it's LCIPP@unfccc.int, but we'll put that into the chat function. So we've already received some inputs on this, including from ECOS, the UN Climate Education, Communication and Outreach Stakeholders Community. So thank you to those who have already submitted some examples there. The web portal design has also taken into account the need to disseminate information about these examples. So that is noted. A new call for submissions will be launched this week to also continue to gather more examples. So this is ongoing and this will be done this week. Moving on to the next activity, which is activity 4. This is about organizing annual thematic training workshops. So as you know from the last meeting, co-leads Daly and Eli, they're presented that this year and going into next year, there will be a series of 4 training webinars to complement the in-person training workshop that's planned for next year. The first training webinar on Indigenous knowledge was successfully held on the 19th of November with really great participation and feedback, and a lot of capacity was built during that. And the next webinar will take place on the 21st of January. So please do mark your calendars for that one, the 21st of January. And the dates for the third and fourth training webinars are still to be scheduled by the co-leads. Through agreement by Indigenous knowledge holders, the materials from those webinars are being uploaded to the website and will also form part of the web portal. And they're being uploaded in English, French, Spanish, and Russian. So moving on to activity 8, this is the one about holding a multi-stakeholder in-session workshop on enhancing synergy and interaction with climate change related bodies and processes, both under and outside of the convention. So far, only one member has come forward to lead this activity, that's Passan. So if another member would like to co-lead this with her, then please just let the group know by email or during the meeting. This workshop is mandated to be held at COP26, which is planned for November to be held next year in Glasgow, hopefully. So during the course of 2021, the co-leads will start to prepare this workshop. Then activity 10, this is the one which is a call for parties, Indigenous peoples, local communities, and others to report annually through submissions on the implementation of good practices for Indigenous peoples and local communities' participation in national climate policy. So this one's all about the national level. This activity is led by ALEC. It's mandated for FWG 3, that's why you heard about it at the last meeting, and again at FWG 5. This week, a repeat of the previous call for submission will be launched to try to gather more submissions on this to what we already received. And then the compilation document that was already prepared under ALEC's guidance will be revised based on any new submissions that we receive. And in-session dialogue will be planned to take place during a session next year, once there's more clarity on sessions. Then the last activity that I can update on is activity 12, which is about promoting the LCIPP at the national and regional level. We're still waiting for members to volunteer to co-lead this activity, so please come forward to the Secretariat or to the group and let us know if you'd like to co-lead this. It's mandated for the next FWG meeting, so we have a little bit of time. But from early next year, the co-leads and the Secretariat will start to work on a compilation of good practices for developing national and regional platforms on this. If you have anything to submit on this, you can send it through to lcipp@unfccc.int or to any of the members of the body, and we'll compile that. We will also work on an updated briefing note on the LCIPP to be disseminated widely through many channels, including the web portal, our listserv, social media, and also through the FWG members to their regional groups and through the IPO constituency. Thanks a lot, Andrea and Jo.
Thank you very much. And I have noted in the chat function, there's a request for everyone to remember to speak slowly so that the translation can capture all of the good thoughts and information that is being presented here. Just a reminder for everybody that is taking the floor. We are ahead of schedule. From the way I read the agenda. And so with these activities that have been mentioned in a fast summary that we will not be speaking on in depth, I'd like to ask if any of the members have a comment to make or have a question about these. Obviously, these are some areas that we are going to need to put some more concerted attention on, just as we have with the activities that we've launched this year. I will say, as one of the co-leads with Pasang so far, we welcome more co-leads on the global gathering that is intended now to be scheduled, and that at Glasgow next year at COP26. The idea originally was that the regional gatherings would be held first, and that from those, the focus of this global gathering, which in a way is the first actual global activity of the platform itself, to engage our knowledge holders and participants in their input that they want to have. So we're going to be challenged with how to do this and hopefully the regional gatherings will be able to take place so that representatives can be designated, and especially information from our knowledge holders and practitioners can be the basis of what is presented and discussed, as well as you say, you know, formalizing more than we have already the rights protocols and rights format and framework for this work going forward, which we will discuss at this meeting as well in relation to at least 2, if not more, of the activities that we're charged with to discuss at this meeting. So with that, is there any comment? I see Daly Sambo's hand up. Please take the floor, Daly.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and thanks again to yourself and Dio for the preparations for the meeting, as well as the Secretariat. I just want to recognize what Estebancio said on behalf of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, or the Indigenous Caucus, and to take what he said really seriously in regard to an update of the activities so far and in preparation for the activities that are forthcoming and are included on the agenda. All of that information that has emerged under each of these activities, my guess is that it may be very limited in terms of the languages and access, the information. I know that for activity 4, we had difficulty just in the matter of interpretation, which I understand will be resolved by January 21. But I think we have to take what he stated on behalf of the Indigenous Caucus really seriously. And it went to language, and it went to the time frame in which these things are happening. So I think his comments are relevant in relation to everything that has happened so far and everything as we move forward in terms of the time frame needed for people to engage and understand the activities and the opportunity to comment on the activities. So I just wanted to ensure that both the FWG membership and, more importantly, the Secretariat understands that this is at the heart of the comments that at least I heard on behalf of the Indigenous Caucus. And I think it's not just the Indigenous Caucus, it's all those other Indigenous peoples who can't even manage to participate in the Indigenous Caucus due to limited broadband width or whatever it happens to be, that all of these activities are somehow more accessible to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Daly, for highlighting that. And I think the issue of accessibility needs to be really key. Participation, as we know, the right to participation as affirmed in the UN Declaration isn't just presence in the room, even if you can manage that, but it's actually accessibility of the information and the protocols that are necessary for decision making that are different from each Indigenous peoples, and especially when we're talking about engaging our knowledge holders. There are many protocols, as we know, for their engagement, including that many of our traditional spiritual leaders and knowledge holders will not think about, even if they had accessibility, you know, sharing anything on the or writing it down. So these are things, as Joseph pointed out, we need to think about doing things differently in order to actually have this unique body be able to function vis-a-vis its mandate. And one issue is for the Secretariat to consider translation, at least in the key, not Indigenous, but the key UN languages that we are dealing with here in our regions. I know this is an expense and is time consuming, but this was stressed yesterday in the caucus meeting that we need to somehow find a way to make sure that even the members themselves are able to consult with their regions through documents that are in the common language of those regions. So thank you for taking note of that, and we have to see how that can happen. If it's a budget issue, a time issue, but we need to try to have that be a priority, I think, going forward. Are there any other comments from Facilitative Working Group members on the issues that have been raised? Raise your hand, please. If so, I can see you all. I am not sure. It seems that we do have about 15 minutes before our break.
It's Rodion.
Oh, Rodion. Okay, I didn't see you raise your hand. Sorry, Rodion.
Yes,
go for it. Go ahead.
Thank you, and hello to all members and participants. And thank you very much, Andrea and you, for leadership, and of course, thanks Secretariat for bringing us together, for your commitment. So my understanding was that under this agenda items, the issue of portal also will be updated and discussed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't see this point for other agendas. Could you clarify? Because I believe the portal is a very substantial issue for all of us. It's not only a communication or information tool, but also it's a more. I believe we should discuss this issue. Could you clarify if it's included or will be updated, and there is some kind of space for moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I completely agree. My understanding was that we were going to discuss the portal on the activity 2 for regional gatherings, because the safeguards language is still not completely resolved from the last series of emails, but we could also begin to discuss that now since we do have some time. Tiffany, what would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair. Just to also answer Rodion in terms of the timeline, the web portal's already been designed and developed. So throughout the last 18 months and the previous 3 FWG meetings, plus the input of the subcommittee, the design and development is complete. At this point, it was designed to be completed by the end of this year. So on Thursday, the last hour slot, which is, I'm not sure in your time zone, Rodion, but it'll be 6 till 7 CET in the evening. That slot is going to be a live demonstration of the web portal, which is already designed and developed. During that, all the participants, including the members, will be given access to test it and use it and have a look, and then give feedback to us. And then there'll be a couple of months of continued testing and tweaking. And then in February, the final portal is launched. That's as per the original deadline. Thank you.
I know Hindu's hand is up, but I would just like a clarification of that current language on safeguards, because I think that as a co-chair, but also a strong mandate on behalf of the region that I represent, is that even the trial launch shouldn't go forward without that safeguards language uploaded. And there was a last minute discussion. And I think along the theme of accessibility, we really need to go back to that language where we quote from the preamble specifically, including with ... and we can use the word including, upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples, comma, local communities, as per the preamble, because we can't, I know just noting these prior decisions, etc. What that means is that our community members, our knowledge holders, Indigenous peoples then are charged with going to look up what that says. And it misses the point of what we're trying to communicate to them regarding the safeguarding of their rights and our recognition that that must be done, especially in this context. So I'm not sure what that current language is. If you could circulate that to all of the members at least, so that we can do a final approval of it before the launching on Thursday. Tiffany and then Hindu.
Yeah, just to clarify, Andrea, I think the understanding between all the members this morning by email was that there was agreement on that. And so that'll just be circulated probably tonight. We've just been a bit busy with the meeting.
Yeah, oh no, I understand.
We've got a lot going on, but tonight it'll get circulated and then we still have some time before Thursday. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hindu.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's so good to see you. Hope you are all doing well. Andrea, you touched the last point because I wanted also to see if it is the last updated protocol that have been circulated or not, because I'm not sure about it. And thank you, Tiffany. Looking forward for these last updating documents. Second, I wanted more clarification. Maybe I misunderstood when you say the participation of our knowledge holders. Are they participating like at the next WFG meeting face to face, or at the regional meetings, or at the national meetings? I do not understand, because I do not see that my grandpa or I don't know, my grandma, or I do not see my uncle or auntie or whatever, that they leave them cattle and just to come to Jemena or fly somewhere just to say, oh, look at guys, I do have the knowledge on doing how the cattle work and how I can graze or how I can protect this one. I do not see them doing this kind of thing. So when we talk about knowledge holders, is it going to be a representative of our governance of our organization, or how it's work? I do not know from other region, but in Africa, I'm not sure that the governance work can work like that. So I think maybe I'm also totally agree with what Yusuf said. We need to work differently. Of course, we know like the rules, procedures, or whatever, the UNFCCC, who is very complicated and who do not adapt to the world that we are living as indigenous peoples. And that's also why even the Ardon's institution with all the solution, why the climate change increase? Why, like in my community now, we still having the floods, why people are struggling if this system works? So that's why we need to make a new approach, especially from the way we are working. And this approach can help us maybe fasten the solution that works for our community. So this is the one I wanted really to get a clarification, and I really support that we have to do things differently, and we have to do things in an actionable way where we can see a solution that can help the environment in general. Thank you, Andrea. Over to you.
Thank you. That's why I stress the importance of the regional gatherings that are in our work plan, and we'll be talking about that after the break, activity 2, that we really are charged to work with our regions to see how that input could take place, who needs to be at the table for these discussions on a regional basis. And then we can talk about how to bring whatever came from that into a global gathering. I agree, you know, our traditional knowledge holders won't even, you know, it was said, well, maybe we could have the regional gatherings virtually. You know, our knowledge holders will not do that. They laugh at us when we suggest it, you know, so they think we're crazy young people. But, you know, we need to talk about how those will take place, and that will really be on a regional basis to see how we bring that knowledge, or those knowledge holders and practitioners, you know, because even the ones that grow the food and hunt and fish and take care of the animals are knowledge holders as well. That is vital for addressing climate change. So, you know, those things we really are going to be left up to you for the Africa region, and each of us that are members on working with whatever committees or bodies we have on a regional basis to talk about how these things can take place, how their participation, face-to-face participation, is even going to be able to be supported. So let's keep that in mind as we go on. We do need to do things differently, and each region will be different in the way they carry that gathering of input out moving forward. maybe it's impossible and can't happen, but let's see if it can. Thank you. Eli, did you have your hand raised? I'm sorry. Let me see. Any other comments on this topic? In that case, we're just 9 minutes ahead of schedule. I was going to ask if anybody from the floor, any of the participants, since we do have a few minutes, to see if any of the other participants would like to make any comments on the topics that have been raised. We did commit to making sure that broader input could happen, especially when we have time. So if anyone who is a participant in the meeting, beyond the Facilitative Working Group members, would like to make a comment on any of these issues or any other concerns, please raise your hand or write in the chat function, and the secretariat will help me to call on you.
Andrea Johnson Soto's hand is up.
Okay, Johnson would like to call on you. Please unmute yourself and take the floor. And if you could turn on your camera while you talk, we can see you too.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I have a question in the latest topic about the knowledge holders. I was wondering if there is an interest for the Facilitative Working Group members to propose like a mandate to create national platforms in order to exchange the knowledge at that level, because we understand even in the regional meetings, perhaps the knowledge holders, it's going to be difficult for them to participate. But if we create national platforms, as we had this idea at the beginning of the creation of the platform, that would be really interesting in order to have an established platform for longer.
Johnson, you muted yourself at the very end. Can you repeat your last sentence, please?
Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened here. But I was saying is that if we have or we create a platform at the national level, that would be easy for knowledge holders to participate, and we have a platform for longer term and not just for one specific meeting. So that was my question, if the members are thinking on the way to propose a mandate, to create this.
Thank you, Johnson. Very interesting suggestion. Hindu, do you have a response?
Yes, thank you so much, Johnson. This is really very interesting, but I think from the mandate of the Facilitative Working Group, it is under the UNFCCC, right? And then we say always like national level or country are so independent to do the implementation in the way according to the realities that they have. So I give you the example of what we did. That's why also I'm so interested about how we can involve the right the knowledge holders. So in Chad, we did have a platform at the national level between scientists and indigenous communities, and then the peoples in charge of the climate change together, where we discuss about our knowledge. And this is also how we are working to see how we can update our knowledge to be considered into the national adaptation plan. So we did this work in Chad, and I did this work in Burkina Faso by having a workshop with indigenous communities and local communities, and having the workshop with the government to see how we can include it in the NAPs, in also NDCs. And then now we are carrying in Benin, and we are going also to see in Niger to see how we can have it at the national level. So I think if the peoples wanted to do that at the national level, it will be really very helpful to see the action oriented to the NAPs and the NDCs document in order to make it as as the real implementation. But I don't know if as facilitative working group, we can link this work directly and say, oh, we are calling you to create a national platform. So I'm not sure about this one, but I think it's really very, very interesting to do it in this way. So I don't know if Secretariat, I see Yusuf is there. So if from another project, or if from this facilitative working group, is it possible to do these kind of things?
Thank you, Hindu. I know we have Ricardo Ulate. Is that how you say your name? And then Yo to comment on this. I know when we had talked about setting up the regional gatherings, we asked the members of the facilitative working group to form a committee, you know, or a body within their regions to talk about how this could happen. And that could be one suggestion through that, if they wanted to then further form national committees to have ongoing input. I understand the need for this consideration. I have Ricardo Ulate, I hope I'm saying your last name right, and then Yo, and then Pasang. And then I think we'll be reaching the break time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea, and good morning, good afternoon, dear friends. Yes, I think this is a critical issue that has been somehow, you know, raised in previous meetings that we have had. And it relates not only with knowledge sharing, but also with the overall participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the policy making processes at the national level. And also remind that this is one of the key elements of the role that is expected the platform to play, is to stress and to enhance the participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the climate policy processes, including adaptation, the NDCs, and whatever. In this regard, my feeling is that every country and the indigenous peoples by themselves should request the governments the need for their participation in the different political processes on climate policy. Of course, this is something very challenging, in particular for those countries who have a very broad number of groups of indigenous peoples. Some of them, sometimes, you know, disconnected. But the first step will need to be, you know, to start thinking on how to take advantage of current formal policy processes to update the NDCs, to develop the national strategies, how they are organized, and how the local communities and indigenous people can participate on them. In the case of Costa Rica, there is a formal group of non-governmental, non-state stakeholders who serve as advisor council for the NDC, which is called the Costa Rican Civil Society Representatives. And there are 2 indigenous people representatives participating in that council. Those indigenous peoples are selected by their own, you know, root organizations in regular meetings that they have. So I'm not sure if we can, and if it is in the context of the authority or the mandate provided to the platform to suggest or to suggest any potential decision on developing national platforms. But for sure, this could be included as a recommendation, you know, for the countries to try to organize that in order for every country, you know, to be able to assume the responsibilities and the tasks deriving from the implementation of the platform at the different, you know, scales, regional and national and even local levels in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. And for people asking the floor in the chat function, if you could identify yourself and your organization, Indigenous nation, people, country, etc., I think it will help us. Okay, Yo, and then the final comment will be by Pasang, and then we'll have the break, and I'll turn over the chairpersonship to Yo for the next part of the meeting. So Yo, and then Pasang for final comments on this topic.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thanks to everyone as well for this useful discussion. I just want to note that activity 6 for the work plan is about developing a set of recommendations for consideration at Substuff 54 on the engagement and input of Indigenous peoples and local communities across the UNFCCC process. And we will discuss activity 6 later on in this meeting. So perhaps that's an opportunity to continue this discussion about establishing or recommending the establishment of national platforms in our discussion on activity 6. That might make its way into the recommendations in some form. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and Pasang, and I just have been notified by the secretary that Lena from Yongo has had her hand up for a while, so we'll let her do the final comments, and then we do need to take a break. So Pasang, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea, and thank you all. Good evening, and good afternoon, and good morning for some of you. My great pleasure to be here to join FWG4 meeting. I just would like to highlight and also thank Yusuf Nasser for his encouraging words, especially for his thoughts in the hope for bringing the transformative changes by this with the lead of Indigenous people and local communities, especially with this platform. So that transformative change to deal with the climate change and deal with the impacts that has brought to the lives of the people on the ground would be possible. I believe that how our global discourse is being reflected at the regional and the national level. The transformative change or the paradigmic shift is possible when you go to meet to the people on the ground. So, when we talk about this activity 12, although we are not discussing here today, and we hope to discuss in FWG 5 in next meeting with our internal work, but it's very, very important that the platform, the implementation of the platform or the promotion of the platform in the regional and the national level. And I totally agree with Hindu sister that talking about the NAPs and NDCs, which is already moving ahead. And in most of the countries, the Indigenous people are not aware. So how we can bring the transformative change, how we can bring the paradigm shift. So that is for that one, and we need the the active efforts from local communities and Indigenous people platform and the secretariat, and also from all the observers who are here for your effective and fruitful and engagement and inputs, and also role and responsibility to be reflected at the regional and the national level where the life matters. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you very much. And Lena said that she would put her question in the chat. And so if the FWG members could look at the chat and respond like that she would defer taking the floor at this time. And that brings us to the close of this agenda item, understanding that these issues will permeate our discussions on all of the activities coming up. And so there will be a chance to take the floor for the members and the participants on some of these very key issues, such as participation, accessibility, equity, rights framework, and safeguards, and all the things we've been discussing at this opening session. So with that, we have a break. It's scheduled for 15 minutes, but if I could ask people to keep it to 10 minutes, get whatever you're drinking, coffee for me in the morning, and come back on the hour so that we can keep our meeting on schedule. I hope that's acceptable to everybody. And at that time, Yo Mulalap will be taking the chair. Thank you. Chokwil Tesya.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. I think we'll get started here as folks slowly get back. And just a kind reminder to the FWG members, if you're able to please turn on your videos while we are meeting. And so for this next agenda item, this particular agenda item will be addressed by the FWG over the next few days, as it'll constitute a large bulk of our work. It'll be on the implementation of the initial 2-year work plan for the LCIPP. And as we go through this particular agenda item over the next few days, we will address those activities in the work plan that are scheduled to be addressed, that are mandated to be addressed in some form in FWG4, particularly activities 2, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11. And so we'll begin today with activity 2 on regional gatherings. Just as a preface, since our last formal meeting of the FWG3 2 months ago, the co-leads for the various activities in the work plan, including the activities under consideration this meeting, have been making a really important and solid progress on those activities. So my thanks to the co-leads on the different activities for all of your hard work, so that we're able to the extent possible, meet the different mandates given to us as the FWG this year, despite the very challenging circumstances posed by the pandemic and our virtual settings. Due to the fact that our members are spread out pretty much across the world at various stages of the day, we only have about 2.5 hours each day to address the different activities on the work plan. And so because of this, I very much encourage our members to adhere to the time limits to the extent possible. With those notes, as I try to, let's see, okay. I have everything here, all right. But before we continue, just to note that the Yongo representative did pose the question that she intended to raise, that she posed the question in the chat. And so I encourage the FWG members to respond to her when you can in the chat. And so on that note, we will begin with a discussion of activity 2, which, as I said, is about regional, the organization of regional gatherings with the participation of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and parties to address climate change matters. This activity is also relevant to the ongoing discussion that the FWG members are having on safeguards and protocols in connection with the participation of Indigenous peoples and knowledge holders. And so I understand that this discussion will also be raised in this discussion on activity 2. The co-leads for this activity are Andrea, Estevancio, Irina, and Medard. The concept note for this activity is online, but I do ask the Secretariat to share a link for the concept note in the chat, and I believe that it's been done. Great, thank you very much. I will kindly ask if you are not speaking to please mute yourself if possible. Thank you. And so with that preface, I will hand over the floor to Andrea, who will update us on activity 2. And if she wishes, she can also discuss the materials that she and I, as co-chairs, circulated to the FWG membership on the topic of protocols and practices and safeguards. Andrea, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chokwe. I'm going to be as one of the 4 co-leads for Activity 2, giving an update. And I invite the other co-leads, as mentioned, to also have input on anything that I may have skipped. As we have already discussed in the first part of the meeting, this was the one activity, formal activity, intended to take place in our homelands and traditional territories, in our regions, and not at a UN meeting or has now developed virtually. And obviously we were not able to do this. We did discuss back last year the possibility of doing some of this virtually, and we rejected that concept, Estebancio and I in particular, because of the reasons we've already talked about, with the intention to actually engage our knowledge holders, our elders, our traditional food practitioners, and others whose input is really the basis of this platform and its functioning. So we noticed, though, early on, one of the deliverables that we had intended to achieve in the regional gatherings was to get the input and guidance of these grassroots practitioners and knowledge holders into the rights, safeguards, and protocols, what they already have in place in our traditional knowledge systems, and what they require for engagement with the outside, in terms of sharing even good practices, outcomes of projects and programs, etc. Because we've already agreed we don't want knowledge to be shared in a public way, just to avoid violating protocol and internal knowledge system methods. So the reason that this became something that was circulated is because obviously we were not able to have those gatherings to develop these protocols that could then be shared with the platform at the global gatherings and outside. So we decided that that was one area that we could engage in. In the interim, and especially around the discussions, around the platform safeguards, but also permeating our entire area of work, this rights framework and protocols and safeguards need to be in place. And this was, as I've mentioned before, in the original submission from the North America region, back before the Facilitative Working Group was even formed, as the first step that was required before we engage in any of these other activities, is to have that rights safeguard mechanism and process and protocol and framework in place. So what Yo and I did was 2 things, with CL's help as well as input from some of our Indigenous technical team that work with the caucus, developed 2 documents that we circulated that could be a basis for an agreement of what the safeguards should be. One was the international instruments that currently exist. And again, my profound thanks to CL and Seb for their initial assistance with developing the document that you've all seen. At this point, it exists only in English, and hopefully we can get it into Spanish and and maybe Russian and French as well. But right now, all of the documents that are cited, because they are UN documents, are available in all of the official UN languages for people's reference. Maybe at least we can translate Yo and I's preambular paragraphs for the document and put links to each one of these international standards, so that everyone can access the information in the official UN languages, at least. The other document that, because it was raised by one of our members, well, what is the context for this? What does this have to do with climate change? Which I thought was an interesting question, but nevertheless, in response, I pulled from documents that had already been adopted by consensus from various Indigenous gatherings, including the North America submission for the work plan, the original work plan of the LCIPP, emphasizing why a rights-based approach was required for not just the engagement and participation of Indigenous peoples, but for actual engagement in addressing climate change issues in our territories. Rights to land, water, traditional cultural practices, seeds, and other food sources, etc., and why that had to be respected for there even to be a willingness or ability to engage, as well as to protect those practices, ecosystems, and knowledge systems in our traditional territories. So hopefully that document, because it addressed activities that I had access to in North America, the Pacific, and Latin America, Caribbean regions, can be a rolling document that others can also submit statements to. So that's one question, is what to do with these two documents. Can they be posted? Should they be open for further input or modification? But can we use these as an initial basis for our understanding and our discussion? The second aspect of the safeguards we've already addressed, and there's been quite a bit of input going back and forth. And I want to thank, first of all, the members of the portal committee that were charged with developing, including participation from the Secretariat, the portal. And this is an issue we need to address at some point as well during our meeting, is if this statement of rights safeguards, which, as everyone who knows who participated in the 4 consultations Indigenous peoples had with states for the development of the Facilitative Working Group after COP21, issues around the portal were expressed with concern by many Indigenous peoples of how this format could implement and maintain safeguards and a rights-based approach. And so this is very important, and it's a key part of this entire discussion, is do we want to then, once we finally see what the safeguard statement that everybody's had input and was developed, first of all, by the committee, how will this be implemented? Who's going to monitor this? Clearly, it has to be Indigenous peoples representatives that monitor, that understand the difference between knowledge and outcomes of gatherings or projects and programs that Indigenous peoples want to share in this context, good practices, etc. So this is on the table for further discussion. As we mentioned, we talked a little bit in the first section about how the regional gatherings could be developed through the leadership of the regional representatives of Indigenous peoples, working with the states in their region and the state representatives, as well as, most important, Indigenous peoples, to see how these physical gatherings can take place, in addition to any virtual discussions you may be having, in anticipation of the first global gathering, which hopefully will take place at COP26 in Glasgow. So these are the updates that I wanted to provide, and there are questions for all of you in what I presented. I'm not sure if Estebancio, Irene, or Medard want to add any thoughts to this. but again, I did explain why this activity became the focal point for developing the safeguards, because this was supposed to be one of the deliverables out of the regional gatherings. So we couldn't wait as the other work continued without ensuring that these safeguards were in place and under discussion that touch on all aspects of our activities as a facilitative working group. Thank you very much, and that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And you did ask if your other co-leads would like to comment. I'll give them a few seconds if they would like to raise their hands or wave their hands. I do not see any of them asking for the floor at the moment. So in that case, we'll move on to a broader discussion of the FWG membership. Please, keeping in mind, Andrea, did you want to follow up on something?
I forgot to mention that the way that we designed our webinar for the climate discussions that took place on November 25th was to ask for input along this topic from 3 different representatives, regional representatives of Indigenous peoples, as well as Estebancio designated Francisco Calizay, the new UN Rapporteur on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but he presented mainly as a knowledge holder and a traditional farmer and food practitioner. So those inputs were also taken in this process, and they've been placed in the discussion for activity 6, which also is the other activity that integrates a lot of the rights safeguards language. So I just wanted to add that. And we had over 300 participants, I understood, in that activity, and it was considered extremely successful with good feedback to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrea, for that. And yes, so we will move on to a discussion by the broader FWG membership. Again, keeping in mind the different questions that Andrea posed for the membership's consideration, including what to do, if anything, with the different documents that she and I developed, how to deal with them, how to incorporate them as necessary, as well as the particularities of the regional gatherings to be held, including in light of the current pandemic. And so on that note, I see Daly. Please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead, Daly.
Thank you very much. I think that the question that you've posed in relation to the 2 documents is really important. My inclination, given the objective of the activity, is that the materials should be used to guide and inform, but more importantly, attract greater specificity with regard to the contours and the content of Indigenous knowledge on the basis of what you've pulled together in terms of the right safeguards that exist. We know that the rights of Indigenous peoples to their knowledge, their intellectual property, their practices and customs exist. And so on one hand, the document, one of the documents is useful for the cataloging and compiling the information. But what I think is missing is the specificity as on a regional basis, because there's extraordinary diversity as to what those documents mean within a particular cultural context. And so I would suggest, and it would be my hope, that the regional gatherings can take place so that Indigenous peoples can begin to voice their concerns dependent upon their political arena, their legal environment, but more specifically their cultural context, and give greater substance to the kinds of safeguards that are needed for them locally, regionally, and nationally, because this is where it's most important, is what takes place out there and on the ground and at the national and domestic level, where the safeguards should be adhered to by national governments in relation to climate change activities and those activities that contribute to climate change. So that's one thing. If in fact there's going to be a potential use of the two documents by the Facilitative Working Group overall, to saturate the discussion in the context of rights safeguards, here again, greater specificity and more information needs to be added. And we would therefore urge each of the regions to undertake more careful review of the documents and really lend their Indigenous voices and substance to the documents before they're moved forward in any way. I could see them being very useful to frame regional discussions. So I just want to share that view from the Arctic region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daly, for those comments. And I personally, I do agree that the documents can very much benefit from greater specificity, especially from different regional contexts, building on work already being done. And so that's a suggestion before the FWG membership at the moment. The floor is still open for FWG members for comments. I also note in the chat room that Hindu has indicated support for Daly's suggestions, assuming on greater regional inputs and specificity in the documents. I do know that if I do not see any FWG members raising your hands, I do note that Chief Frank did raise his hand earlier, but I think maybe he put his hand down. I don't know if that was inadvertent, but if Chief Frank, if you're, yes, I see your hand up again. And I do not see any other FWG members wishing for the floor at the moment. So I see you, Chief Frank, please go ahead.
Yes, greetings to everybody. I appreciate all the work that the Facilitative Work Group members are doing, and the Secretariat, and the people that over 100 people now all over the world are online, as I see on this. And that my comment is that when we're dealing with the rights safeguard issues and we're dealing with these issues, that primarily what we're, as Indigenous people, at least from my point of view as a tradition holder and tradition bearer, is what we're willing to share are our values and philosophy. Maybe not the specifics of medicines or specifics of certain types of knowledge that we feel that need to be held closely and not shared. And these are the things that we're concerned with in this. But if we think of this knowledge that we're sharing as being a value system and philosophy, a worldview, that's really what I feel we're trying to share with the world. And so maybe that would help us as we look at how we work on protecting and working on this whole question of the rights safeguards and the discussion later on about the portal and other issues of this sort. So had we had these regional meetings, this is one of the things that I would have brought out very strongly, is this idea that what our concern about sharing is the values of respect for the earth, respect for each other, and how that's a reciprocal, that respect is reciprocal between the earth and us and all of the different beings that we share this world with, and consequently the issues of climate change. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see Daly. Please go ahead, but before you do so, I just want to note that in the chat, Jane and Estevancio have indicated support for Daly's previous comments. But Daly, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think what Frank has just now said is really important, and actually the other dynamic that I forgot to mention is the protocols and the guidelines for which others engage with Indigenous knowledge holders and work with them to employ Indigenous knowledge, and that's really what we're talking about, is creating that space in order to co-produce knowledge in relation to climate change. And it's those procedural elements, much in the same way as we have now recognize that there's a lack of specificity in operationalizing the right to free, prior, and informed consent. Here, we need the guidelines to safeguard how, in fact, we operationalize the objective of co-production of knowledge, or the engagement with others as to our knowledge. And so I think what Frank has indicated, it reminds me that really the emphasis is not upon treating Indigenous knowledge as information that we can dump someplace. It's treating knowledge holders and our way of life on the basis of recognition of and respect for how we're willing to utilize our knowledge to advance more culturally relevant ways to address the issue of climate change, but also to ensure that those who are making policy decisions about climate change at the international level and at the national level actually outreach to Indigenous peoples so they can generate the best available knowledge about these issues, including Indigenous knowledge through our Indigenous knowledge holders. So I think that it's the emphasis too often has been placed upon, oh, well, we'll just, dump Indigenous knowledge someplace. Well, you can't do that. You have to, it has to be done on a basis of researchers acknowledging and recognizing what Indigenous peoples have to offer in terms of these important questions, and to work collaboratively and cooperatively with them through rights safeguards to reveal the important information that Indigenous peoples have to advance sound knowledge that will inform policy decisions. So I think that what he stated is really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daly. I do not see anyone else asking for the floor at the moment. So just, oh, sorry. I see Pasang. Go ahead, please, followed by Andrea.
Yeah, I saw Andrea hand. If she wants to speak, go ahead. Go ahead.
Up to you if you, yes. I think she's indicating that you can go ahead, Pasang. Go ahead.
You, please.
Okay, thank you, Yo. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I think I really totally agree, Dali. The safeguard is very, very important, and the bottom line for all respecting our rights and for our way of life, and for protecting and addressing, acknowledging, recognizing of our values and concept, and that are the basis of our livelihood. That are the basis of our foundation. That are the basis of our identity and whole dignity and respect. So the safeguard is very, very important. Generally, the safeguard has been projected like, okay, the social safeguards, like, environmental safeguards, economic safeguards. So it presented in such a way, very light way, Oh, we have a safeguards for, economic safeguards. So the safeguards is presented in different projects and policies of the governments or discourse in such a light way that hardly touch upon the real safeguards that to be guarded of the indigenous people, interconnectedness of the indigenous people's value system that is not just only possible to be touched upon, just only touching the social environmental economic safeguards, but the interconnectedness that invisible interconnectedness like spider webs, all the strands is equally important, and that to be supported by the safeguards, because whole our knowledge system, our value system, our dignity lies on that one. So that safeguards, they and it's very very important to be reflected. And our discussion on the guidelines or our the value system, or all the discussion that we have been doing is that the bottom line is how we projected our whole projected by the safeguards, or how it's been protected by the safeguards. We would like to highlight that and these safeguards, when we discuss in the global discourse like this forum, to be replicated at the regional and the national level, because that's the where the life matters. And then I totally agree, Dali, that the ultimately the life matters on the ground, and that to be protected through the layers of the discussions from the national, from the global, to be reflected at the national and local and national and the local level. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So regarding the documents, the first one is basically a list of instruments. So if maybe we could at this point post that and ask for, as Daly commented, for the different regions to work with their region to elaborate based on specific regional contexts with examples, etc., which is what the second document presented, but from certain regions, which I had access to, those documents and those statements. So I would like to see if we are willing to present that first document, which is the list of instruments, on the portal as basically the existing international framework that's relevant to our work, and then keep the second one, which is the Indigenous people's context, as a rolling document, understanding that it needs input from other regions and other contexts. So I'm just really concerned, that we launch the portal without that kind of information, front and center in terms of the existing international instruments that dictate to the states, many of which are legally binding and all of which are morally and politically binding, for how we see this context. The second issue is the issue, because I don't think it's on the agenda further to talk about the portal, is how we want to renovate the role of the committee to keep on reviewing all the submissions to ensure that these rights frameworks are being implemented. And again, this, with all due respect, this isn't something that can be done by a secretariat. That has to be done by Indigenous peoples from all the regions, who then, if they're in doubt, can take consultation with the knowledge holders or others from that region or people. So I think this needs to be something that we put in place here, because the committee right now, their mandate is ending on the 17th. Whenever the portal is being launched. We need to say that we want them to continue to be engaged or form a new committee, something to ensure that there's oversight on an ongoing basis, not just quarterly or whenever we can meet, but somebody's responsible for checking out things before they get posted, I guess, is what I'm saying. And if we want to do that,
Andrea, we lost audio for a few seconds there, or at least for me. Yes, it seems like for others as well. We still cannot hear you, Andrea?
I like that. Is that all right?
Yes,
that-
that's fine. Yes, thank you.
Speaking to the computer now, it might be in the headphones. I'm just saying that we need to make that decision as a working group here to reconstitute or to renew the mandate with an additional mandate of the committee, so we have some Indigenous oversight of the implementation of our safeguard statement going forward for the portal, as well as asking for additional information on an ongoing basis from the regional representatives to add to the Indigenous peoples context document, or either add to that document or submit additional documents. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrea. I see Hindu. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Clement. I mean, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood something. Are we still reporting back on the activity 2 that Andrea presented as it is in the agenda? Or we just like jumping from it to the website? Because I'm a little bit confused. I wanted to contribute to this one, to the to what Andrea said, and then now we just like jump to another one. So I wanted the clarification first before to contribute.
Thanks very much, Hindu. I'm happy to ask Andrea to clarify. I will note, though, that one of the deliverables for Activity 2 is a tool on the web portal for highlighting the work and recommendations of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous-led gatherings and conferences. So there might be a space here to discuss how to address the web portal in connection with the different safeguards recommendations that are before us. But I'm happy to turn it over to Andrea if you wanted to clarify anything. Thank you.
Just to say exactly, and I think everybody had input into approving the concept note for Activity 2. So they're aware that it also includes that tool, which is why we've taken on spearheading that. It's really part of the same activity deliverables. And there is no other place on the agenda that I can see where we're going to be discussing the portal, which is why the safeguards language, which is also going to be discussed, as Daly mentioned, regarding participation and engagement under Activity 6, which we're just developing at this point. The draft is not on the website because it's still under discussion of the members. But that tool for the portal for the safeguards is part of the deliverables. So the portal's about to be launched, and we have to get that piece decided. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you. Yes, please go ahead, Hindu.
Thank you for that. But yeah, maybe we need a little bit to structure it, the discussions. So in the Activity 2, because in the agenda, it's put to if there is any update or what we can do, or if we can adopt it. So far from the Facilitative Working Group 3, we say that the Activity 2 is really very important, and we need to organize the regional gathering, and we requested that one to get postponed to the next year, because we cannot organize a regional gathering. So in my view, in this Activity 2 that she presented, so far there was any regional activities that got organized. So this activity is not implemented, even we have the concept note. Maybe when are we going to organize a regional gathering? Where funding will come from? Because it's involved many things. We cannot just like list the activities in the work plan, and then of course we all understand that COVID come and change all the plan of the peoples, and then we say, well, while COVID come and change it, so we say we postponed it and we just forget about it. So I would really love that we discuss as members to see, is it next year we are going to organize a regional gathering? Is it 2 regions come together, only 1 region? How we can do to find a funding to organize this one? It is any partners through this platform who wanted to volunteers to say, okay, I will be happy to support the organization in Africa, or I will be happy to support the organization in Asia or Latin America or whatever. So that can help us maybe to move forward accordingly in this activity too. We agree on it and we can say we cannot implement it now and we can implement it later. So because this is the main objective of the activity too. Of course, I agree with you. The another outcome is how the tools of participation can be done, and then this one maybe we can discuss, of course, about the protocol or safeguard or whatever. And then I think this one also we said that the Secretariat will send us the last version that we can see. And I believe in this point, the only thing I can add, how are we going to share it with our caucus? Because of course, as Facilitative Working Group members, we can have it, but the website where this protocol will be posted, it's going to be for all the Indigenous peoples who are working with under UNFCCC. And then we need to see if this protocol is acceptable by the caucus also, and of course by all the members, and that can help us to move forward accordingly. So here are my comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hindu. I did note that Daly raised her hand previously. Yes, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you again. If I understood correctly, there is reference to the web portal, and the concept note states a tool on the dedicated LCIPP web portal for highlighting the work and recommendations of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous-led gatherings and conferences. So I recognize that we've gone through a process to achieve a consensus on right safeguards in relation to the portal. And so to some extent, we've already advanced that discussion. And then the way that I see these documents is in the larger context of the essence of the objective, which was regional gatherings. Hence my suggestion that we treat the documents in that broader context. Even if we move to advance, as Andrea is articulating the documents, the right safeguard documents specifically in the context of the web portal, it still needs an indigenous, in my view anyway, it still needs an Indigenous orientation as to the instruments that are compiled, and also the second document in terms of how it could potentially be operationalized, or because it has to have a linkage to what Indigenous peoples are saying about the significance of Indigenous knowledge and how to employ Indigenous knowledge. So I think that at this moment in time, we really can't adopt the documents. We've made clear in our recent discussions about the portal the importance of rights and rights safeguards, of which the compilation illustrates. But even that compilation needs a clear orientation about, again, the employment of Indigenous knowledge holders, etc. So my suggestion is that that we endeavor to review carefully the documents, and either as Andrea has suggested at the regional level, to enhance both of the documents, and then take up consideration at another time, and potentially at potentially at a forthcoming FWG meeting specifically to address the issue. I'm just not comfortable with taking the two documents and saying, oh yeah, we can approve these, and simply because we have this time frame related to the portal. That I think they they require some more careful analysis on a regional level and also an important Indigenous orientation to both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daly. I see Andrea, go ahead, please.
That sounds good to me. I mean, the first one is just a compilation of international instruments. There may be some that we left out, which could be added. The second one was stated as a rolling document that required more input from an Indigenous point of view. Those are all excerpts from Indigenous positions and gatherings, and clearly not representative of all the regions, because, you know, I just pull the ones that I have access to and that we participated in. So that one, the idea is to need more work, and it would be fine, I know, to table consideration of both documents. And the assumption is that we as regional representatives are sharing and consulting with our regions. I've shared both documents with North America, and we've begun discussion, and there is, you know, idea that we'll continue discussions. So probably one of the big shortfalls is the language and translation issues. So maybe we could ask that both of those be, I have them in Spanish and English, and I did the ones that I have for the Indigenous perspectives document, I included in both Spanish and English, but not Russian and French. So maybe those would be good to get translated as we use them as a tool within our regions to further discussion and develop positions and thoughts. And the same for the safeguards language of the portal, because again, that was originally generated by the committee, which has regional representation of all the regions. And then it went to the Secretariat, went to legal review. We had some pushback of things that we felt had been eliminated from the original document, and then they were added back in. And I think we just have one question still to decide on it. And hopefully we'll be able to look at that tonight and come back to it on our agenda to get it up before the what's it called, the soft launch or the trial balloon of the portal goes up on Thursday. So that's my understanding, and that process is fine, because I think, as you say, yes, we have to get something for the portal sooner rather than later, but this discussion permeates all aspects of our work. And I think it would be good if the members could have input to them and be put on the agenda for our next meeting to further discuss, to see where we're at with them.
Thanks very much, Andrea. I do note that there's a request for the floor from one of the observers, Ariel, the ranger. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. Before turning over the floor to you, just wanted to remind FWG members the questions posed by Hindu on the logistics for holding regional gatherings next year, if at all. How to organize them, where funding can come from, or other forms of support, whether regions are thinking about combining their gatherings in some form for next year. So that's still up for discussion of FWG members to the extent possible. But for now, I turn the floor over to Ariel. Go ahead, please. I see you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having some connectivity issues, so I won't be able to turn on my camera. But I just wanted to sort of state that this conversation has just been really, really good to hear that there seems to be some agreement on the need for further clarification of these issues within the protocols and the safeguards language. And I think that that's really critical in relation to even Hindu's questions, because if we have this portal up and running and there's this push to get it up, you know, beta tested within like a few weeks and out into the world. If we're hosting these gatherings and providing funding for them with an understanding, maybe even a misunderstanding that the information will be shared on this portal without those safeguards and without what Andrea was discussing around having oversight and daily having oversight from Indigenous representatives is really, really challenging for me to think about, because we need to absolutely have these things in place. And I really support Andrea's motion to have this really firmed out and completely decided upon by consensus amongst the regions before we move forward. That doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about the regional gatherings, but I think that if that's the case, if we want to move forward, then we need to either make an agreement on holding off on the website, but still moving forward with the regional gatherings, because I think those are critical. And I really, really hope that we can move forward this way. And I really support Andrea and Daly's recommendations that we really try to make this a priority before moving forward with the launching of the full website.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other requests for the floor. Just give folks a few more seconds. We do have just under 10 minutes left in today's meeting. I do not see anyone raising hands. Okay. Andrea, go ahead, please. I see you.
I'm just seeing in the chat that Tiffany can clarify on the funding issues that Hindu raised. And I'll just reiterate what I said before, is that in the case of Latin America, Caribbean, and North America, we plan to hold a joint regional gathering in Cunayala, Panama. And of course, it will have to be next year. And that original intent has not changed. And hopefully we still have the same commitment from the funder as from last year, but I think we need to follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Tiffany, did you have a comment? I see you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Yo. Just to clarify on the funding issue, since this is an activity in the work plan that was agreed under the SUBSTA, there would be funding for the activities as part of the funding for the LCIPP. So it doesn't need to be funded externally by different networks and things. We would look for the funding once we know what the plan is, or once we know the timeline. So that's just a clarification on the funding. It is a mandated activity. And then just in terms of the timeline of the soft launch and the formal launch next year, if FWG members want to give us advice on that timing, then we also take that into account if there's agreement on consensus. So that we are listening to your comments in terms of the timing of the formal launch.
Yes, thank you very much, Tiffany. And on that last point, I do note in the chat that Graham has asked Tiffany for clarification. He's asking if you meant that the UNFCCC has funding already, or that you will look for funding. If you can clarify that once again, Tiffany, thank you.
Secretariat gets funding for its core and for its supplementary funds. And it's based on the mandates that we have. And part of the mandates are what is in the work plan for this group. So I don't have that information right now at hand, but we can have a look. And we have certain amount of funding for the LCIPP that we can allocate to certain things. So if this activity is planned and there's timeline for it, we would allocate funding towards that. And if we don't have enough, then we fundraise for supplementary funding. I hope that's clear. It's a little bit complicated and I don't have the figures at hand right now, but this is just how we do all the mandates within the whole Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. Hindu, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Clemens. Thank you, Tiffany, for this clarification. It will be really good for us to see because it is adopted by COP, and then we have the activities and we need the funding to do it. I mean, Africa, it's coming from developing countries as well as Asia, as well as the rest of the regions that the indigenous peoples wanted to have some support to organize this regional gathering. And we know that we wanted to have them. So if you can come back to us with a clear idea how much that we have, and then how much can be dedicated to this regional gathering. And if there is not enough, maybe we can see the strategy of fundraising to implement those activities. It might be very helpful. And I believe also from all the 14 of Facilitative Working Group members, we have 7 of them coming from the state. And then they have also the strategy from the state part where they can advise us, and then together we can help the Secretariat to do the fundraising and then to implement those activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hindu. I don't know if Tiffany wanted to follow up on that. Yes, go ahead, Tiffany. I see.
Yeah, no, just to say thank you to Hindu for that comment. That's really helpful. We also do it the other way around. So it's not only that we will tell you how much funding is available and you have to make decisions on that basis, but if the members decide to have X amount of meetings and they want to have them here, there, and there, then we would do a budget for that. We would get an understanding of what the funding needs are. So it can also be the other way around, but we would also rely on the members to give us those kinds of, without that information, it's hard for us to make a budget. Will the meetings be held in which country or virtually, or how many regions together, how many people would need to be invited, these kinds of things. Without that information, it's hard for us to come up with a budget.
Yes, thanks. Thank you very much, Tiffany. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Perhaps my suggestion would be for the different regional representatives to come up with a bit of a wish list, so to speak, of gatherings that you would like to hold, funding permitting. And then perhaps that can be communicated to the Secretariat, which will then inform you of the current funding situation and possible future fundraising. That's just a suggestion on my part. And I see Hindu with a thumb up. Great, thank you. We have a few more minutes left. I see Pasang. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany, for the information. I just have one question. Because of the COVID this year, the activity to the regional gatherings could not take place. So we are postponing for next year. Now, what I understand from our earlier documents that at least once in a year we'll have a regional gathering. So there's how the possibility of having like 2 regional gatherings coming year, like one is already discussed by Andrea, but because we could not do it this year, so how about we could do 2 regional gatherings, maybe in Asia and Africa, another one. So I just want to have your thoughts on that one, clarification on that one. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pasang. Before I turn over to Tiffany, my understanding is we're allowed to have at least 1 regional workshop per year in 2020 and 2021. We're unable to have in-person workshops this year, of course, but I think we are allowed to have more than at least 1 and more than 1, of course, workshops next year, funding and other considerations permitting. But I'll turn it over to Tiffany if you have any comments.
Yeah, no, I think you've captured it. That's the mandate. It's at least 1 per year, but obviously this year it was impossible. If members feel that next year the safety and health concerns can be overcome and a regional gathering can be held without putting anybody at risk, then we would look to your advice on that by consensus.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. I do not see any additional requests for the floor. I have very poor French speaking abilities or reading abilities. So if anyone's requesting French in the chat, I would like to ask my colleagues if they can let me know if anyone's asking a question on my behalf.
There was no questions. She just posted she's joining from where her organization, and I already responded to her. We are very welcome to have her. Thank you, Yo.
Thank you very much. I did get merci. I can understand merci at least. So on that note, my understanding for this particular activity is that we will on the documents that Andrea and I drafted in terms of safeguards, those will remain under consideration by the FWG at least over the next year or so, including to help ensure proper regional input into those documents over the next year. I would also note that there is a space for a deliverable in Activity 2 for a tool on the web portal that could, among other things, reflect these documents once the FWG has finalized them. That seems to be my understanding of the discussion so far. There was also a little bit of a discussion about what to do with the web portal committee, noting that that committee is not directly being considered under this agenda item, but its work is important in terms of its possible involvement in maintaining these different documents. We could discuss the committee under other matters later on in this meeting on the last day. That can be a possible space for that discussion if we want to continue that discussion as FWG. Now, that's my understanding so far. I see Daly, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a request for clarification. If I understood, Tiffany, your comments earlier about the portal, that you would benefit from the advice from the FWG about the portal and the timing for its launch. Is that correct?
That's correct. So at the first 3 FWG meetings, when this was on the agenda, it was decided that the launch should be around now, at the end of 2020, or beginning of 2021. So we've been always working on that basis, and we've got the software developers working on that basis. If the FWG agrees to advise that it should be at a different date, we would take that into account. But just to say that the sort of the design, the software design and the functionalities is done, but all the things that we add on there, like the safeguards declaration and all of these things, that we haven't posted that on there yet, so that we're still waiting for your advice on that. But the tools that are mandated, like the tool for this one, that's part of the functionality. So the software developers have already developed that functionality. Just to say that that part is, it's done and it's taken care of already.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Andrea, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick question then. We've I think, agreed that the web portal will not be available in any kind of public way without an agreed on the safeguards paragraphs, which are almost, I think, ready. There was just one more issue circulating as of yesterday. So we're going to look at that tonight. This soft launch, I forget, your trial launch that you referred to, trial balloon, will be posted on Thursday with that agreed on rights safeguard statement on the homepage. Who will that be available to look at? I was never quite clear on that.
Go ahead, Tiffany, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andrea. So the whole event is 1 hour. What's going to happen for that hour, where people can have a look at it, like sort of take a tour of themselves through it, that's a 1 hour. So we'll make it available online for that hour for people that want to have a look at how it looks. Hopefully with that safeguard statement there, if it's done by that date, which I think, like you said, should be done tonight. But then after that hour, it will take it off again. So then it goes through some more internal testing. As I understand, there's some technical testing that has to be done for a couple of months by our IT colleagues. And then it should be ready at some point to around February, after all the IT side has been done. But the actual soft launch on Thursday, that's just a 1 hour window where people can have a look at the web portal as it stands at that point.
Great. Then I would say that before it's launched in any more public way, we need to decide about the role of the Indigenous Advisor Committee or whatever it is to review all the content that is up there already, as well as new submissions, to make sure that this rights safeguard language is being properly implemented. And we don't need to talk about that now. We can do that under other matters, but I'm just concerned that before we leave this meeting, we have in place a mechanism for final review from a cultural perspective and a rights perspective by Indigenous peoples from all the regions.
Thank you, Andrea. Tiffany, I see you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Yo. If you wouldn't mind, if we could give the floor to David, my colleague, he can explain a little bit to Andrea and others about the workflows. The subcommittee has already advised on the different workflows from January onwards, so maybe he can give us some more information on that.
That's fine. Thank you very much. And colleagues, apologies, we are a little bit over time. If we can beg your indulgence for a few more minutes to conclude this discussion. Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving me the floor, Yo. Just to shine a little bit of light on that, we have the opportunity now. So as already Tiffany has said, that we are going through on Thursday through the portal, but this is basically just for this limited amount of people who will then also just close the access again for. In terms of the workflows, I think there is an ongoing discussion there. We have dedicated people in the subcommittee who will also further work on this. There is also the opportunity to basically do or do not go about like the submission functionality that these workflows would require. So in this workflows that we have discussed so far, there are several stages. So for example, with the safeguard statement on it, we could then there also have a report functionality that you basically people who can see that that content is not appropriate can be reported and then taken down, probably in conversation with the subcommittee or another dedicated structure around the FWG. So the discussion about this in the subcommittee ongoing. We have a meeting set for beginning of January to further talk about this based on the provision that have been made available in the safeguard statement.
Thank you very much. So I do see Johnson is asking for the floor. Your hand is up. Go ahead, Johnson, please.
Oh, thank you. In relation to the regional activities, I was going to ask if you know the Facilitative Working Group members are engaged with other institutions organizing regional meetings. For instance, I wanted to share that in Latin America, at least the COP25 presidency, they are organizing a regional conversation with the indigenous peoples and the governments. And the idea of this meeting is to provide some inputs to the platform. And they are moving ahead. I'm a member of one of this committee, and several indigenous organizations from the regions are also part of this. But I'm wondering if there is any connection from the Facilitative Working Group to this regional big event, virtual event they are organizing, because we should take advantage of this opportunity as well. They are organizing this with the support of the European Union. So just asking if you have any other engagement in the regions, but we do have one in Latin America.
Thank you very much, Johnson. I invite the FWG members, if they do have any updates on that front, if they're planning on engaging with existing or planned work, that could be a useful synergy that can be explored. If you have any updates on that, you can share with us at the moment, but if not, to perhaps keep that in mind going forward as you start planning for your regional gatherings, hopefully sometime next year. I do not see any more requests for the floor. So thank you very much, colleagues. So in addition to the brief recap that I gave just recently, just noting where we are with the different documents that Andrea and I prepared, as well as our current understanding of the work to be done on the portal, including the work of the portal committee, as well as planning for regional gatherings next year, including in terms of possible funding, availability and opportunities. Just keep all of those in mind in connection with this particular activity. With that, Andrea, did you have any final comments before we conclude for today?
No, thank you just for co-chairing, and thank everybody for their important contributions, and we will rejoin tomorrow.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea. So yes, we will resume tomorrow. I believe it's at the same time of day as we started today. And we will begin tomorrow with activity 5, which is on an outreach and dissemination plan and thematic training materials. On that note, thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much, participants. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you, and thanks to interpreters.
Yes, thank you very much to the interpreters.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Merci.
Merci.
Merci. Au revoir.
See you tomorrow.